One of the most common writing styles at university is the essay. In this video, we'll look at structure, structural elements, and we'll look at style. We'll look at each of these in turn. Let's look at basic essay structure. Essays essentially come in three parts. There's an introduction, there's a body section, which is further divided into subsections in paragraphs, then there's a conclusion section. Now, every piece of written work you'll do at university will have a word count, and the three sections have percentages of the word count. Now, this is a guide only, but the introduction and conclusion are roughly 5% each of the word count, while the body is 90%. You need to write within plus minus 10% of the total word count. Let's look at an example based upon a 2,000 word essay. If we're using our 5% guideline, our introduction will be 100 words, our conclusion will be roughly 100 words. The body section will account for the rest of the word count, 1,800 words. Now, here's a tip. If you have to describe or define some parts, the descriptive sections will not take as much of the word count as the critical interpretive elements of the response. I'll say it the other way around. The critical interpretive elements will always take more of the word count than the descriptive parts. So think about that when you're dividing up your words. If you're describing or you're defining terms at the start of the paper, that might be 200 word section. The next part might be 400, then 600. I'm not saying they exactly have to be these numbers, but what this tells us is that the substantial elements, the interpretive critical elements, look like, to me, they're coming later on in this body of work. And the descriptive elements are earlier. So you can spend your words a little bit like money. You can consider where to spend it. Let's think about the introduction. Start with general statements. What this does is set context for the reader and provides background. It says to the reader basically, this is what we're talking about. This is the topic. You may need to provide definitions. It moves then from the general to a more specific focus. It narrows the topic to exactly what you're talking about. It positions the paper, and we call this the thesis or the thesis statement, where you offer the position of the paper, what the paper will do. There's an example there, using a key, strong verb. This paper argues that. And what it does is that it offers a clear structure to the paper in order. And that's a tip. If you set out an order of argument in your thesis statement, this paper will look at A, B and C, then A will be the first section of the body, B the second, C the third. Let's look at the structure of the body. Now, this is divided into sections, and we get these sections from analysing the task. The thesis statement frames these sections. It gives us the sequence of the sections and the positioning of the paper. Those sections can be divided into smaller paragraphs, which are followed in a linear sequence through the paper. It's cited and supported. Everything we do is going to be supported with cited examples, and you need to know your citation system, and you'll know this by working with the library, using the library website, and we're always offering relevant examples for support. So this principle of relevance is crucial. Everything in the body section, everything in the whole paper must be relevant to the task. So, a tip, use language from the task, from the question. Use key terms in the paper to show that you're on task. Let's move on to paragraphing. A question, how long should a paragraph be? Have a think about that. It's a bit of a trick answer. There's no set length. Paragraphs are idea units. One main idea. New paragraph. And the main idea is signalled by a topic sentence. There are some examples. The primary cause, a key solution, usually found at the start of the paragraph. Most pages are divided into paragraphs, so some tips. Avoid overly short paragraphs. Ones of 1 to 2 sentences lack elaboration. Overly long paragraphs, over half a page, it can be difficult to follow the message. Paragraph length will vary. What you have to ask yourself is, does it all support the main idea of the paragraph? Let's look at the conclusion. You need to wrap up, provide a logical finish to the paper. There's no new material introduced here. There should be some reference to the question, to the topic, to the thesis that you introduced in the introduction. You summarise briefly. Now, don't stop there. This is a classic mistake a lot of writers make where they think the conclusion equals a summary. It doesn't. You actually need to provide some type of conclusion where the reader takes away the main message. It essentially answers the question, what do I now know that I didn't know before? So, for example, what is the best solution to juvenile diabetes? It may offer a solution, it may offer future or next steps. The crucial thing for me in the conclusion is that it actually concludes something and answers that question, what do I now know? So, there's a process to produce this work. My tip to you is that you start in the body. So you analyse the task, you break it into sections, you read, make notes, you write. You can then produce your introduction and your conclusion. You go into an editing phase where you're checking that all of those elements we've talked about are present, and you think about the word count, and then you submit the paper. So, the elements of academic style. It's formal. If you know the more formal forms, use them. We use full forms, not contracted speech. You can use repeating abbreviations as long as you put them in brackets after the first use. Essay writing is generally objective. It's generally not in the first person because the focus is on the issue. So this paper versus I argue. Reflective writing, however, does use the first person. It is a bit different. We often need to take a position, so it may need to be critical or interpretive. There's some language that does that, some examples. It's cohesive, and we use our signal markers to join and signal ideas in our paper. The cohesive language joins the content together. It provides the narrative. Now, in essays, we generally don't use headings. That's a report thing that we do. We don't use it in headings. The intro, body, conclusion, organised in sequence paragraphs gives us the structure we need. So, things to check before submitting. There's a checklist there. Things such as you've used key terms, you've used paragraphs, you have a clear supported position. Importantly, it's all relevant. So, how can I get better? Read. A lot of reading. Look at models. Don't copy them. Look at them for structure, style, language. Past papers. Read the task brief carefully. Identify key terms. Use them. Also, read the rubric. Look at what's expected, how it's graded. Take note of feedback. And a big one, commit to improvement. Academic writing improvement can be a long process. For more tips and resources, search for Academic Skills UniMelb.